As of yesterday, we doubled the revenue.
What would you say contributed?
The first is,
The question though was ultimately what made you decide it was time for you to leave your corporate gig and go all in?
where like I was before 2 years ago was at a completely different level of being to where I am now. And this is super controversial because everybody says that it's top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. Two posts. The first is
Luke Shalom is the CEO of Atticus, helping CEOs turn LinkedIn into predictable pipeline with inbound, outbound, and AI tech.
A lot of people just paint this picture and or we see it. It's like the whole social media thing in general. People only see what, are often the good bits that are put out there.
I think a lot of the time, the results that we create in our lives and for our team is it always comes from a place of who we are being in that moment. Over the last 12 months, the 12 founders that we've worked with to generate 1.7 million, all we do for the content strategy is...
Welcome, Luke.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Michael and Latin. Really happy to be here.
No, appreciate you joining us today.
So, Luke, you went from balancing a demanding corporate job and, ultimately having a side hustle to fully committing to grow solo. What was the turning point that made you take this leap?
Wow. Plot twist. Not plot twist, but huge spoiler here. Grow Solo's dead. It's dying as of next week. I'm
No way.
rebranding the agency to become Atticus. But we can talk about Grow Solo today, but that is coming next week. So the reason why we decided to do that and kill it off is because we were dealing with a lot of mid-market and enterprise customers. And I had a friend of mine who's a VP of sales at a cloud company go, mate, if I saw Grow Solo Media on an invoice and I was the VP of sales signing this off, I might not sign off this spend just because it sounds small time. And I heard that from multiple larger buyers, and I thought, we need to shift this in another direction. We need to rebrand. So framing that in the same way, what was your question again? And then maybe I can give that context.
Let me go down there a little bit more just to make sure. Is it just a brand change or is there more changing to it?
It is a branding change. It is a service change because we're moving from the content creation for executives to be able to do entire teams or in-house machine learning that we've been building ourselves so people can scale up content. And also sales development rep as a service and AI-powered sales development rep, which is able to be placed into your LinkedIn account to book meetings. Because the bottom line is it's not enough now to post content on LinkedIn. You need that approach where you have inbound and outbound. So it's almost like this service evolution that I sort of came to doing this over the last 3 years running this. And then it really scaled in the last 12 months. So that was the service shift and also the branding shift to where we are now. So it's not just a branding thing. It's also a slight service change.
Okay. Interesting.
Not a business model change, right? Just servicing different.
No, not a business model change.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. And I'm sure we'll dive more into that too. And some of the questions we'll you just twist them for the right response. Cause in some cases, it'll be really interesting to kind of understand the thought process around this further if it comes out in the question. So the question though was ultimately what made you decide it was time for you to leave your corporate gig and go all in on, I guess Grow Solo at the time, but obviously now as it changes. And was it even Grow Solo at the time, I guess?
Yeah, it was Grow Solo. So I was working for a company at the time, content agency that did cannabis SEO. It was an awesome job. I was in the sales of the company, and that quarter I did 160% of quota. I still remember the first time I made a 5-figure commission slip, and a year before I was making close to $2,000 a month or something. So my head exploded. I was like, this is crazy. But then I also saw the upside that I was able to get the company, which was close to $250,000. So in that moment, I was already doing my stuff on the side with working with one CEO. I just thought well, if you could get that money for somebody else, why couldn't you do it for yourself? And I wanted to leave that company at a point where it would be gracious to do so and it wouldn't leave them in a bad patch. So I did the quarter and they had another salesperson coming on board. And then me and that CEO basically just decided that I think I still remember his words, and I still like, I've got a lot of respect for that person. He just said, "Hey, like, don't take this the wrong way, but like, I think you're like unemployable, meaning like you're meant to do your own thing. Like, you should go out there and like build this company and business. And I wish you the best of luck with it." So, I mean, it was really prompted. It was really prompted, but yeah, no, he's a great dude, and he's like super successful as well. And only a year older than me. So, like, I mean, in the run up to that conversation, I had a sales coach at the time called Justin Michael. I don't know if either of you are familiar with this guy. Like, he's multi-million-pound like sales coach. He just said to me, because I hired him at the time to help me in regards to my sales abilities. Because before I ever took on that job, technically speaking, I was an underperforming sales rep who'd like been fired or left most jobs I'd had. So I was like way out of my depth. My quota for the year was like 1.6 million or something, and I'd never even carried even a tenth of that amount before.
Oh, wow.
But the LinkedIn run up to that point had helped me to get that. So I was like, shit, like, so I bet in my entire life savings to hire the sales coach. I was like, I need you to like turn me into a beast in a very short amount of time. And I remember my mother at the time said like, you're about to pay like this person on the internet, like $5,000. Like for me at the time, like $5,000, that's still a lot of money for me. But like 5K at the time for me was everything I had, like literally everything from like years of saving up. Like, because I just wasn't making much money at the time. And I was like, no, like I trust in this. I think this will be a shift. And then in that coaching process over those months, hit the quota. But then I realized it was like Justin just said to me, he was like, he rang me up one day. I was on a walk in the countryside in Norfolk because I was living at my parents' house at the time. Just like 2 years ago. And he goes, there's nothing between you and your boss. Like in that sense, like he's just the guy that bet on himself. He's further ahead in the journey than you. But there's nothing that person has that you don't have internally in you. It's like the day you realize like the good things that people say about you and you actually believe that shit. So you believe that. He's like, that's going to be the day that everything's going to change for you. Like I see that for you. It's like, in fact, one step further, like there is nothing between the Luke Shalom that you are now and the Luke Shalom that would be making like 20,000 a month. And at the time when he said that, I literally was just like scoffed at it. I was like, that's a ridiculous thing to say. I was like, it was because at the time it was results that were, besides that one commission slip, it was results that were like 4 to 5x the current salary. And he was like, you'll do that in a year. And he went, who got your results, Luke? Was it you or was it this company? And he's like, if you look back at all of the things you've done, it's always the individual that has done these things. He's like, what's stopping you? He goes, you can do it. And like, I literally the next day I handed my notice in and the rest is history. And then I actually boarded a flight that next, it gets even more extreme. I think this highlights how impulsive I am as a person. So I was with my ex-girlfriend at the time and things weren't going well between us. And like, this was just like a prompt to go in that direction. And I'd been to Medellin like a couple of like, months prior and I absolutely loved it. I remember thinking, I want to live here. So literally 2 months later, after going full time, I broke up with my ex-girlfriend. And then like within 2 weeks, I boarded a flight to Medellin and then I just went and lived there. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go and build this business, grow solo media, like in the tropics, have a great time doing it, be on the same time zone as all the US clients, and let's just get after it and just crush it. So it really accelerated at that point where we went like within 2 months, like we were at like a 5-figure run rate. Like, so we hit like 12,000 GBP MRR, like within those first 2 months. That for me was just insane because previously it was for me, it was for like it was results that I created for myself rather than for a company. And Justin was instrumental in that change and like seeing that for me and like guiding me through that process. And then very slowly, like over those next 6 months in Colombia, for the rest of that year, we scaled them. Then we doubled revenue again. So that was like pretty crazy. So we hit that 20K like in revenue, but still hadn't actually done like a 20K a month yet in like profit. And then I lost a couple of big clients at the end of last year. And I was like, oh, Christ, like it was the first ever time like I had like that serious testing. And then I realized it's because I was doing this by myself, really, with like a couple of contractors. So I hired a guy that I met in my co-living, my guy called Colton. Cotton Matthews, and he's our new account director on like sales development rep as a service now, and he's been working with me for like 12 months. And he was a guy that I met who was like a sales development rep at the time for a couple of real estate companies. This plucky guy who's 23 years old, super cocky, super arrogant, pitched me on like why you should hire me. He's like, listen, like hire me. I'm gonna absolutely crush it for you. Give me a shot. If I'm rubbish, fire me like in a week. Like that was his pitch. So we hired him, and then he like absolutely crushed it this year and had that like oscillation into like what he's doing now. But from the start of that year, this year was really tough. Like it wasn't the same growth. We stayed in revenue at around like the 20 to 23K like GBP limit for like most of this year. We gained clients, we lost clients. Like, and it was brutal. Like it absolutely tested me to my absolute limit. And I was just gracious that like we were able to remain profitable. And I had this like road of Damascus moment in July where I just realized I'd gone off track. I set up this coaching business on the side. I was making good money on that. But it was inflating the earnings that I was making on the agency. And it was making me believe that the agency was doing better than I thought it was. So I was looking at like the P&L going, oh yeah, we're crushing it. Like last month, like we did like $20,000 in profit. But then if you actually looked at the agency side of things, it had been like over time, we weren't gaining revenue. We weren't signing clients. So it was like, I got sucked down a rabbit hole, and then I almost launched a cohort. I sold the cohort out, and it was something like $20,000. And then I lost my biggest client ever in our agency. The money that was coming in from the agency hit a point where the fixed costs were the same. It was just break even.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, like, excuse my French. I was like, what have I done? Like, I've gone down this rabbit hole. I've gone, like, I felt like I'd let the team down. I let myself down, like as a leader. I chased a shiny object. And I just sent back $20,000 to everybody who'd already paid for all of the work. I sent it back. I went, you know what? The universe, God, whatever you want to call it, if I relinquish this and focus on the main thing, the agency, it's going to come back in some way. Because I sat there on my field in Norfolk, outside my parents' house with my head in my hands, like literally on the verge of tears, just literally like, how could I not see this oversight? And my girlfriend comes over and goes like, what's up? What's happened? I was like, we lost X name. And she was like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I think I'm going to send the money back. I'm going to refund the cohort. We need to get the agency back on track. And I had this goal. I was like, right, between now and like end of August, between like the end of August point and the end of this year, I was like, there's nothing for it. We have to double revenue, because our best month like this year was 30,000 GBP MRR. And I was like, we need to double it. We need to get back to that point, like by any means. So we set about it. Like we completely relooked at like all of our systems, the client delivery, the sales process. I invested heavily into myself, my own sales abilities, like the team, giving them better, like, I guess, better training, and just was stopped just being distracted by things that weren't the main thing. Because we also had at the same time as this, an investment deal that was on the line with a couple of like multi-7-figure agency owners too. That deal has now been done, and I'm announcing that next week. So we now have investment in Atticus as a company. Nice. And so we were at a point there in August where our revenue was not even enough to do the deal. And I was like, oh, like it was a significant piece of investment for a portion of for about, I don't know if I can say this in a podcast, for a small minority share in the company. It was the biggest investment that I would ever have had ever in my entire life, to bring on board 2 people into the company that would have changed everything. But from my own oversight of chasing shiny objects, I was just throwing it away. And then when this had happened, we realigned. This quarter, as of yesterday, we hit the goal. We did it. We doubled the revenue in like 3 months. which I literally sat there yesterday and I was like, 2 days ago, and I was like, because I remember when I set that goal, I was like, I didn't know how I was going to do it because I'd never done that before. And the whole time I'd done this, it would have been the amount of revenue growth that we had done in like an entire year, the year before, in like 4 months. So it kind of was like this stretch goal, like, and I wrote it down on paper like every single day. And this, I'm a big believer in this shit. And we can get into this. I'm a big believer in asking like universe, God, or whatever you want to call it, for alignment of like whatever you want to achieve, and then having the actions to execute on that. And I wrote that down every single day, and I imagined it like it was already happening. And I was so like dogged and certain about it. Like I just said to the team, like in that meeting, I was like, we're effed up right now. Like we are close to not being in a good way at the end of like that Q3. I was like, end of Q4, we will double revenue. and I went, like, believe me, guys, we're going to do it. Dig in. And I promise you, if you can stick with us over this period of time, because the team at this point it was hard. Like, it was really hard. Like, it was not going as well. And then now it's like yesterday. Yeah. So, I just appreciate that was a bit of a rant, but I wanted to give the magnitude of the journey and story, because I think there's too many people on LinkedIn that make this stuff seem easy, and they make it seem like everybody's making all of this money and everything's already fine. I was like, I'm not going to lie to you. Like 80% of the time, it is like chewing glass. Like that is the equivalent. So we have 12 team members, 4 full-time, the rest contractors. We're in the process of bringing on board an operations director who's replacing me in like the management side of things, like in the day-to-day. Bringing on board a new writer, who is again nurturing that like talent in-house writing piece, and a project manager. So that would bring us to like roughly like 4 plus 3, 7 full-time people, and then the rest contractors. Yeah. Sorry guys, I feel like I'm ranting, but like
no, you're good.
You got me on a little roll there.
You're good. The story is great to hear, actually, because I do think you're right. A lot of people just paint this picture, and or we see it. It's like the whole social media thing in general. People only see what are often the good bits that are put out there. So like I appreciate the transparency around it and the candor, and like I'm curious for some of those changes that you did make, because it sounds like before, as I don't want to say solo, but it sounds like you knew that. It sounds like there's a pathway there as solo. As you grow a team, obviously now you have a lot more overhead and stuff like that, but you sound like you are definitely more vested in this longer term. And is that because you're building something bigger than yourself and looking at the scale of what you're building, or like why not stick with the solo thing that could be lucrative? Why are you leaning this way?
Great question. It's a narrative that came up a lot, like over the last 3 years. For a long time, I was trying to play like the cash rich, like solopreneur game, but then I just realized that like, what are you optimizing for? And that business model doesn't cater towards that way of doing things. If I wanted to do that, I'd just be a consultant. So I just decided that I'm going to try and build more of a company. I guess hopefully build more towards an exit and take the trade-off of, like, I guess you could say like being more cash rich in that sense. And I think the thing that was driving that is I was really excited by the problem of people not being able to generate qualified pipeline and the predictability of that. Because I spoke to, how many sales calls have I done this year? I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of people. Like I've probably done this year, maybe it's got to be like almost 200 sales calls, from a mix of founders across tech industries, service, cloud, like artificial intelligence, software as a service. Everybody says the same thing. We can't get in front of our target buyers. We're paying more to acquire customers, and like we're struggling to differentiate. And I just got so obsessed with solving that problem that I just wanted to do it on the biggest level possible. So like, how can we build an agency that took this new way of doing like LinkedIn demand gen and replacing that playbook with lead generation and us doing it our way and leaving our mark on what's possible. Because I truly believe that lead generation is dead in that sense. I think new way of doing things now is demand generation, meaning, okay, like we're going to get fewer opportunities, but these are people that are going to be generated through like content. They'll come through and like we'll have seen our content from a stage of awareness, are going to reach out to us early in the buying cycle, and they're more likely to close and the higher quality in the decision makers versus, 1,000 leads in the funnel, 100 go through to like sales qualified leads. There's no buyer intent or little to no education. Your buyers borderline, none of them trust you. You're actually coming from a place of distrust. And then by the time you actually get them, salespeople have been on hundreds of hours of calls, and then the close rate's really crappy, like anywhere from like, I don't know, from, like a 10 to 15% close rate, or even maybe less. It was like in enterprise. So which one would you prefer? Like you prefer like loads of time on calls and like poor fit leads, or would you like more like quality opportunities for people that already trust you? And that's demand gen. And I'm so obsessed with solving that problem that I wanted to play at the biggest level possible, assisted by my investors to do that. And it sounds, I guess that might sound a little bit like grandiose, but I don't know. It's always been my personality. I just love solving problems. That's it. And if you're going to solve a problem, why not do it on the biggest stage possible and have the biggest impact? That's just me.
Sounds like good old entrepreneurship. It is. It's like you look at it that way. So, and sometimes it's the game you're after too. And it's not just the other.
I have a question for you. What would you say contributed the top contributing factor from hitting your goal of doubling revenue?
Oh, great question. Two things: retention and increasing close rate. So retention is the key to growth in anything. That's what one of my ex-CEOs used to say. He used to be on these calls and be like, the really posh British accent, he used to be like, retention is the key to growth, guys. Retention is the key to growth. And I never understood that until I was an entrepreneur. Now I go to the team, I go, the same thing, but like maybe in a like slightly rougher accent. Like retention is the key to growth. And if you can't keep your customers and provide a service that gets the results that they're paying for, you don't have a business. You don't even deserve to be in business. So up to this point, when we weren't doing this, like the AI sales rep as a service piece that we now do for Atticus, or will be launching to, we were losing clients. Like our like long-term value of a client was like anywhere from like, we had, it would be anywhere from like best case scenario, like 6 to 8 months, which is okay. Worst case scenario, we lost clients after like 2 months because they're like, Luke, where are my leads? Like, and you're like, well, like content takes longer to reach. And it's just like, they don't care about that. I realized they're caring for like the outcome, which is pipeline, which is like points on the scoreboard, to be in like the pipeline call with your team. If you're like the VP of sales or the CMO who's backed me to run this project, and they go, well, this is the pipeline we've got from this project, guys, and this is what's closed, versus, hey, we got some impressions from LinkedIn, we're getting some good traction. Nobody cares about that. So it's just like, we changed the outcome to the reason why the buyers were paying, which in my mind is sales qualified leads and revenue. And booking those meetings using the SDR, our retention rate doubled. It went from like 6 to 8 months to like 12 months. So like some of our clients have been with us now for 60 months. That was a complete game changer. So it meant that while we weren't signing clients in that economic climate, because I think a lot of the times there was a bit of a doldrum there for everybody, the US election, etc. Like, not an excuse, just what I saw and heard from others. We kept who we had, upsold them, increased the LTV, provided them more value as well, got way better client results, way better referrals and references. And then by the time this quarter came around, I invested in coaching from Tim Dodd because I realized I was selling more to mid-market companies and enterprise like companies doing like 20, 30 million a year and above. And my experience was in transactional based selling beforehand. So I didn't have that experience for complex selling, like with multiple stakeholders and deals. And they also realized that a lot of my competitors don't have that experience either. And like everybody's kicking about the small, medium-sized business level, like with companies doing like 5 million. I'm like, who's going after the big companies? Like, I want to get some mega deals in.
Yeah.
So I worked with him. He completely looks at my sales process. He was like, this is good, this is good, this is good. I think this is where you're losing people. And we redid everything. We redid the way I was running, like the initial call. We made it more like consultative. We made it more about the metrics that these people were looking to increase or decrease, quantifying impact better with buyers, doing more of an ROI case on like my proposals. And then I actually changed my offer a little bit because I was like, you know what? If we're getting these really predictable results for clients who matter the industry, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. Because in the industry niche at the moment on LinkedIn, people are like, hey, like, give me, I don't know, $3,400 a month, and I'm going to write you some LinkedIn posts. And I need you to commit to a $15,000 contract. And they're like, well, what's the offer? They're like, well, you might get some leads. And this is what the problem I saw is that so few people had a good guarantee. So I was like, you know what? What if we took a risk? We saw that the average like benchmark that we could get on the campaign with a buyer in our ideal client persona, with a great offer, social proof, a great product, in technology or SaaS, we probably get them anywhere from between like 5 to 10 sales qualified leads a month. Sales qualified lead defined as like somebody who has like the funding to act, an authority or decision maker in the deal, and or the sales team that they would have uncovering a need or timing. That's actually a deal. Like that's a real deal. So I was like, I spoke to my girlfriend again. Like I bounced all this stuff off her. I go, what if we go on a pilot? We will guarantee you the actionable pipeline for you to close a deal on this. And we configure that with them in the discovery. I go like, okay, well, what's your average contract value? I don't know, $150,000. So how many sales qualified leads does it take for you to close a deal? And they're like, oh, maybe like 5. I've got a 20% close rate. I'm like, okay, well, let's assume that 50% of those will slip to next quarter. So really it's going to be about 7 to 8 sales qualified leads. Hey, like Mr. John CMO, does that sound right to you? Yeah, that's right. And then you're like, well, what if I told you then your minimum upside on this pilot would be X, and I'm happy to guarantee that. So I switched the offer, I improved my sales process, and the close rate went up. I don't know by what amount, but those were the changes. And I should know that amount as the CEO and founder of the company. And I feel like I should go away after this and work out exactly what it is.
Good,
but you asked me what changed. Retention, changes to sales process, and changes to offer. So I guess it's 3 things.
And do you think that guarantee that you made, it was more of like, it kind of acted as this internal challenge to yourself where you actually kind of turn up the notch too, because you made the guarantee?
100%. I was like, you know what? Let's double down. Let's get it. Like, why not? Like, let's, and I've heard so many people when you say that to them, because it's already a good offer. And then you go like, well, you know what? Like, that's actually, I'm going to ink that on the contract for you. And there's not many agencies in the LinkedIn space that will do that, because like, if you just have a content offer, you can't do that. It's huge risk. Yeah. So you need to have the same combination of inbound and outbound, and also email that we do now as well, in order to say that and have a confidence to do that. Otherwise, it's going to be a loss-making deal. So yeah, so both, I guess, a challenge to myself, but also faith in the team from evidence that I'd seen.
I'm curious too, when it does come to these leads or how you're helping, in generating, are they similar types of customers, or are you having to set up content and everything specific to every customer each time?
Can I qualify your question? Are you referring for each and every client, or within a client if they have 2 different ideal client personas or 2 different markets, and you're making one concept for this market and one concept for another market? Which one is it? Or is it something else?
Let's say each and every client, where like, I wasn't sure, like we had somebody on recently who a lot of their leads are all generated in the tax, field. So in that case, they can take a lot of their leads they're generating and they could send them all, out to these different clients. Like, is it something like that, or is each one different for you?
Each one's different.
Okay.
Each one's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like we've driven pipeline across God, real estate, sales, software as a service,
Nice. So then
e-commerce,
what's
like
that
there's
framework
different
then?
content as well.
Yeah, that sounds like it. So then for you, there's obviously a framework or a system that you put in place. So what does that look like when you work with somebody, and like what tools are you also leveraging to execute against that?
Yeah, so it's it's two things. It's a mix of inbound marketing and outbound, like sales, assisted by some tools. So the first piece of the action would be like obviously setting up somebody's LinkedIn profile. I'm not going to go over like the specifics because people have labored this to death, like format it like a landing page and format it
Right.
like a
Yeah.
sales letter. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to be that guy to
Yeah.
tell them that on the call and not say anything of value. So here's some new stuff. Well, new stuff in my opinion.
Yeah.
So format the profile, and then we're gonna aim to really determine like who is the ideal client persona or ideal client personas that is the economic buyer in their deal. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is it two people? Is it one person? Who cuts the check? So, for example, for um, for a company I'm working with at the moment, so like they're doing some pieces with like sales enablement. So the people that cut the check for them are sales operations leaders. So we know that once we understand like, and we interview some of their customers, because in all fairness, like the idea of what them as a customer, like the client says is the ideal client persona, and they say that these are the things that their customers have, and then you go, hey, Mr. Client, have you asked your customers this? They go, I remember we had a branding consultant that came in like 3 years ago, like post COVID. And then you're
Yeah.
like, okay. So it's a hypothesis. And so an ideal client persona is always ever changing towards whatever the needs of the market, whether it's a bear market or a bull market, going to be completely different offer, completely different like frustrations, etc. So we go and interview the clients. We say like, okay, like my clients' customers, and we say like, okay, like what made you buy? What made you almost not buy? What did you think you were buying? What was the unexpected benefit of that? What was like the biggest transformation? And what were the problems you were having at the time that when you came to them? And then we map all of that out, and then we get a really good idea of what their pains, opportunities, desires, specific metrics that they care about are. And then you have a ideal client persona that actually fits the needs of the market at that point when those clients were signed. So if they were signed this year, then it's going to be pretty accurate. So how does that relate to a content strategy? Well, yes, it's going to be obviously top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. But if I was to simplify this for any founder watching this right now, and over the last 12 months, like we've helped the 12 founders that we've worked with to generate 1.7 million from LinkedIn. All we do for the content strategy to varying shades is 2 types of posts. And this is super controversial because everybody says that it's top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. 2 posts. The first is product-based or service-based posts. So this is taking a pain, opportunity, and desire metric that client really wants, and we will literally just break down how the product or service is going to help them to get that. The second post is an authority post where we are showing that we have a mastery of the reason why their problem exists in the first place. Because there's this weird psychological phenomenon. Like if you can describe a buyer's pain to them better in their own words than they can, they instantly think that you have the solution because you have a knowledge and mastery of the problem itself. But when you, in those authority posts, it's painting the problem and then just giving a really quick insight on like what or why they could do to solve it. You don't give the how, because the whole point of authority post is really a sales-based post, because they reach the end of it and they go, right, yeah, this problem is painful for me. They have a good understanding of why it exists. Here's what the benefit is of me doing this thing, but I don't really know how to do that. I need to message them to find out how they can solve my problem. Do you see the difference with like like the standard approach of going top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom of funnel, and all of this stuff is tactical stuff, and you're giving away all of the info. So the client's just like, well, I've got all the info. I'm going to pass this to my marketing team. They're going to try it themselves. We want to incentivize them to go, these guys are experts. They understand my problem in depth. I can see that their product can solve my problems. and our pains, and I can see that like they don't hold that information on show. So I have a compulsion to reach out as a lead. So that's the first process. We will stack that a week as a cadence of anywhere from like 3 to 5 posts a week on LinkedIn from a senior leader's profile as it stands, who has buyers in their network. Because I've had CEOs be like, we're going to do my profile. And then I go, well, what's the quality of your network? How many buyers you got? They go, well, I'm like, you've got 1,000 connections, but your CMO's got 10,000 connections. Like, who's got more? And I go, don't recommend that at all. Back your CMO to do it. We're going to have way more likelihood of like success in this campaign.
Yeah.
So once that's set up and it's running, we want to do the following. We want to set up this like feedback loop where, yes, over time, we're going to be like looking at like on that buyer journey, and we do this with them on the kickoff call, what are the things that have to be in place? What does the buyer have to believe in order for them to buy? So it's like highlighting what are the things broken in their industry? What are the reasons that you believe that these problems exist in the first place? What is your new way to solve those problems? And then once we distill that, we just take that in the content as narratives over time, and we just talk about that over time. And then I would usually expect like within like 8 weeks to get like the first inbound leads. But the biggest game changer here is not the fact that the content is running, because for most people at this point, it is not something that is going to be super predictable. Like you're not going to have a CEO within like the average connections of like, let's say like 1,500 connections, getting like 5 sales qualified leads a month from LinkedIn. Super unlikely. So how can we actually get in front of buyers?
Yeah.
The real reason why people get content now is for engagement. So it's like the likes, the comments, the views, the connections on LinkedIn. And that is where at this stage, we set up our outbound cadence where we have an AI trained sales development rep who is basically trained on social selling specifically for LinkedIn. Huh. So we will create, you're going to jump in?
No, I'm just like, I'm like, that's so interesting. Your approach to it.
Yeah. So they sit in an executive's account as them, because when an exec reaches out, there's a higher likelihood of them responding to a response rather than passing it off to a member of the sales team who goes, hey, like, would you like to take a meeting with us? So like they will open up conversations with all of these people, but we also scale that outreach on Sales Navigator. No new news there. So we can get ideal prospect lists. However, what we then do is if a CEO over time, like we encourage their marketing team to set up like webinars as well monthly that we drive traffic back on the post. Because the reason why we do this, when we have webinars, when we have like the Sales Navigator outreach running, like the messaging running, when we look at like competitors' posts as well, we get lead data. And then we take all of those, export those as CSV files. And then if you've got a CSV, you can use a tool such as Clay, which is an AI enrichment tool. And we can take all that data and I can scrape that and get all of their content details. So then our our sales development rep puts that all into an email cadence in order to increase the number of touch points, being like, hey, like I reached out to you on LinkedIn, like, but I'm also getting them on email as well. And we also encourage the client at this point to literally designate a rep to sit there on a dialer to whoever like we are like going after these people too. Because it's not just LinkedIn content that's going to do it. It's not just outreach that's going to do it. Right. It's not just email that's going to do it. It's an omni-channel approach working together to get to the point where you're seeing these results, like 5 to 10 sales qualified leads a month and scaling. Anything else is just literally playing lip service to it. Like it's just you throwing your marketing spend into the wind.
Yeah.
And that's just what I found. Like that is the playbook. And then I guess the extrapolation of that is, one of the biggest problems with, I think, our industry as a whole in founder-led marketing is if you cut me a check, say for 6 months, and you're like, hey, Luke, like, I'll pay your team like $30,000-$40,000 to do my LinkedIn founder brand. And we're going to do that, but it's one account. If you're a mid-market company and you've got multiple departments and multiple like verticals, that isn't compelling. So where do they go from there? And this is something I keep coming up against with buyers. They go, well, I want my entire team to post. So once you have a hub of great content from a CEO, and not all of that will be personal because we make sure that it's product based or authority based, we can take that using our like language learning model we have in house. We designed in over 10,000 great quality lead gen posts on LinkedIn and all our client posts. We can have them and train their team to have an individualized like AI for every single team member on their sales team. And then they can use the content that we're creating them for the CEO. Crazy. And then they can get the sales team posting as well. And then you've got this GTM motion on LinkedIn that has legs that can go beyond the CEO. And then you hear it click for them. They're like, right, okay, this is the next level. This is the next step. It's not just spend. I'm going to keep spending for a CEO when 5 to 10 sales qualified leads, if you're a mid-market or an enterprise company, is a drop in the ocean. It's not compelling. It's like, it's an amplifier across everything you're doing. But if you're really looking for that scale, you really need to incentivize an entire go-to-market team of both marketers and salespeople to be posting. And I guess it being a combined motion. I feel like I'm really ranting here, guys.
It's all really interesting. So when they do that though, does that mean that somebody on the team is now setting up their own profile around this and technically building something possibly from scratch, or are they using a company specific one? Like, because people come and go from companies, what does that actually look like, that piece of it?
Yeah, great question. So it's a mix of both. So because it's a software as a service application that they can have access to on a subscription basis, they can literally just use this for how long the person is in the business. And they can use it for the personal page or like the reps pages. And it's going to, like, the rep will have to do this themselves, but like this is something that would be managed by the marketing team to incentivize the reps to post, but it's going to help them to sell better and bigger.
100%.
So I guess, I mean, if I was a rep and I was wanting to make more money, like I would really be leveraging whatever tools I had at my disposal to get there.
Yeah, that
makes
sense.
Answer your question? I feel like I haven't quite answered that.
So I think as that, just to take me through this piece of it. So right now, if a company, most of the stuff was coming from the CEO or CMO or whoever it was, but now you've got these 5 sales reps on the team. In that scenario, would sales rep name Artin start, even if he doesn't have much of a LinkedIn following, would he actually start leveraging and posting on there using your guys' tools and building that out, or would it come through the company in a different way? Or am I misunderstanding that?
No, it would just come from Artem himself. It's just an enablement tool to help him to get better results. Now, if Artem wanted to do that, he could do it. Yeah. But because the biggest challenge I always hear is, okay, once we do 6 months, where from there? Like, because what is one profile? And as much as we love you, Luke, I'm not going to cut you a check for 10 accounts on 6K a month or something. We're not going to cut you a deal for $60,000 a month for marketing spend to do our LinkedIn. So where do we go from there? So it's this problem that everybody has, like with founder-led marketing. So it's like, it has to then go to the sales team and have a system in house to do it. Because look, as much as I would love our clients to work with us long term, I also know that it's almost about getting them in the door, seeing how it works. And I guess what I'm working towards now is providing them the infrastructure to do that, showing them what great looks like with like a basis of content over like 6 months to a year, and then actually training them to hand that off. That is like me spitballing right now where I see the industry going, because I think it will be more on a infrastructure model long term, is like, how can we give them the access to like the best post with the AI data that we have, and best practice, so they can hack into this, have a period of time where we train them off, and then go, hey, like, we're off to the races. That's where I see this model going in like the next 2 to 3 years. And if we don't adapt to that, I'm going to be out of a job.
No, I actually think you're completely right, because that's how I keep thinking about it too. And with these tools coming out there and the agents that everybody's going to have available, it's like, well, you can either, that's the step that companies could take and make that even easier for their clients to do. And in that case, the clients will use those agents for a fee. And I think that helps retention too, because otherwise, you're right, that becomes a challenge. So I think that model's smart. And if people don't adapt that way, you get left behind, or you're using somebody else's tools.
I'm almost like aggressively investing in learning and development at the moment, because I said this to I saw a couple of competitors recently who are absolutely crushing it. I don't even think they're like the competitors. They do different stuff to us, but I guess they do consultant lead gen. It's Cold IQ. Like shout out to it's Cold IQ. I see these guys all the time on my LinkedIn, all their team posts, and I love the fact they're like super technical in their content. And I'm just like, these guys have got lead gen like really nailed. And I might be calling out a competitor here and giving them business, but like shout to them. But I just said to my account director today for like the sales driven rep piece, I was like, we need to be at the cutting edge of whatever it is that is out there to be the best way to do these things. And just because we're doing things a certain way at the moment is not like, we should not be doing it for the sake of doing it. Because if we do not adapt, like we will like this, there's no point in doing anything like at the end of the day. So I just feel like our best point here is to say like, this sounds like, I guess, I'm a firm believer in like life and business. Like if you're not first, like you're last. And like, that sounds so like crushing to say that, but like, you've got to be at the crushing edge of like whatever it is. Otherwise, like, what are you doing? Like, why, and I looked at some of the competitors and I was like, you know what? We do this really well, but they do that really well. And I try to think like a buyer as much as possible. So what I actually do, mate, is both of you, I go into buyer sell cycles. I book demos with people. And then I literally go, even if I don't necessarily want to buy, I will go, what did I like about their sales cycle? Why did it resonate with me? What did I hate about it? What made my skin crawl? What made me not buy? And then from that point, I take that and I will implement that into what we do in regards to that. And also like invest heavily in like coaching, etc. for the team. Because I think that is the single-handed biggest reason why our business and myself as an individual have seen the speed of growth that we had in such a short amount of time, because of just this awareness of like, I just truly always believe that there's a better way of doing things. And I encourage the team to do this. I was like, just because we do something right now is no reason for us to always do it this way. In fact, if you like, and I say this regularly in calls, I'm like, guys, if you see a process you think is bleep swear word, like if you see a process you think is rubbish, create an alternative. Let's try it. If it's better, we'll do it. And in fact, if we aren't moving forwards and continue to iterate with our SOPs and process and the reason why we're doing things in the first place, that is where I get really nervous, because I'm like, we're doing things for the sake of doing them. In fact, I'm always evaluating, like, is there a better way of doing this? Can this be done faster? Can this be done more efficiently? And almost to a psychotic level, because I'm there in bed at like 4 a.m. in the morning, like, I wonder if we can automate this piece of the outreach, or I wonder if this specific piece can be like tweaked, or who would we need to hire to show us that one specific thing? Like, I think you could both understand that. Like, you both work for massive firms and companies, and like, that's it's a mindset thing, isn't it? Like continuous improvement, and I'm taking a beginner's mindset to things.
I mean, Michael and I think the whole continuous improvement and innovation was definitely drilled into us. So it's part of our DNA now, and everything we look at, because that's all we did, especially at Disney.
But and I think as you say all those things, though, it's like, I mean, I could see how this has really helped you in that success. Obviously, look back at, it's nice that you had that person in your corner, even if they sounded like they weren't in your corner, when you're like, you shouldn't be doing this. You got, you're made for more. It's like awesome to be able to have somebody who can acknowledge and see what you're.
That's everything. That's everything for life. Like I say this to my girlfriend so much. I think a lot of the time, the results that we create in our lives and for our team, and how we show up as like a leader, how we show up as like a person, a lover, whatever you want to say, it always comes from a place of who we are being in that moment. And your current results reflect your level of being. And I'm going like esoteric here, but what I understand is where like I was before 2 years ago was at a completely different level of being to where I am now. So in order to become to that point, to have those people say those things, it helps you to see a compelling vision of what you could be. Totally. And if other people say that and you actually inherently begin to take that on board, and over time get that social proof that you can do these things. And there's not just like fake it till you make it, but also you drum into it to yourself every single day, and you remind yourself of those things. That's everything. Once you have that person in your corner backing it, and the day you believe about the nice things that people say about you, and you truly believe it, not even at a level of, like, that's, I guess you're right. When you go from going, you're right, to, yeah, that's right, I innately believe this in myself, that I am what other people say about me on the greatest level, that is the moment your entire life will change. And it almost changes in an instant. That sounds really esoteric, but I can't find a better way to end the podcast, because that is what separates people from going like, to put this bluntly, mate, like 7 years ago, I had a time where I was incredibly unwell. Like, I spent months in hospital, and I came out of that. I was so in debt. I lost all my friends. I lost my ex-girlfriend at the time, and I've been to the pits. I've been to the bottom. And to where I am now, it's just a complete another level of being. It's like, that is it. It's like, it's 20% tactical and it is 80% mindset. So if there's anything to take away from this, and anybody wanted to do what I had done, and I don't think I've got even to 1% of what like my potential is in that sense, or even 100%, if somebody wants to do that, it is always coming from that place of like, who do I need to be to get there? What do I need to learn to tap into like these other levels of like state and consciousness? And I can't give better advice than that. Like, that's how I would tie it off. Like,
it's great. I love it. You ended up really, through the stories and stuff you crafted here, just being able to tie so much back to kind of the mindset. And I love just, how transparent you are around the things, what's working well, what's not working well, because I think that's the reality of the journey. And I think when people see that and they understand that, but they see how you've looked at it from an adaptability perspective, from this, I'll call it addiction to growth, that I like in a good way, where you're like, it's like constantly
psychotically addicted to personal growth.
Yeah.
And always, and the ability to talk, like, it's unpicking that belief. It's like the day that you unpick being uncomfortable as a bad thing is the day like your entire life changes, because know this, guys, like, you've been in these big positions that you're uncomfortable a lot of the time, but you know that your skill set is getting to that point where you just become better at solving problems, and you know that you don't need to be comfortable, because you have the ability to solve in discomfort and sit in it and be comfortable in that. That's it, I think.
It's great.
It's a self-confidence that you just know that no matter what situation you're put in, you can find yourself out of it. Obviously, bearing health or anything like that, but it's just your ability to say, and I know Michael and I are very similar, where throw anything at us, we'll figure it out. We're resourceful enough, and we'll figure it out. There's no reason to be, the sky's falling. There might be some uncomfort and pain, but you always get out of it on top. And I always see that's your mentality, and it's going to work really well going forward.
Yeah, it's like, it's everything that I've seen in my life. I think if you look at everything that, like, the last couple of years and life in general, like, I'm 29 years old. Like, I'm sure there's somebody who's watching this who's like 40, 50, be like, who's this jumped up kid giving life advice? But like, a lot has happened in the last like 8 years, and it's almost like the impossible generally, like, whatever you think is impossible. Like, if I reflect now from like when I was sat there like looking up at the stars in that hospital when I was 22, like, just feeling like I'd thrown my life away, and what I'm doing today, that would have been my impossible. And it's always just reflecting, keeping going, like, no matter what it takes. Like, you might fail, it might lead to something else.
Sure. Well,
just always iterate.
Yeah. And I think that's it, to iterate. I mean, that's it. You can always, iterate. And I think something that is coming a lot out of what you're saying too, that I could tell, and this is how I try to look at life too, and I think is just a healthy way to look at it is, are you, the person you are today, are you different from the person you were a year ago? And for me, that's what I strive for, because if I'm not, then I'm stuck, and I don't like that. And, again, Art and I both happen to be Tony Robbins fans as well, and something he talks
Oh, I
about.
love him.
Okay.
I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan.
Awesome. Great.
I am
yeah.
a huge Tony
No, that's
Robbins
awesome.
fan.
Tony, great. And one of the things he talks about is how happiness, like the core to that is actually growth. Like people overlook that, or progress is what he says. And it's like, and that's where people who find themselves in these places, it's the lack thereof of those things. And that's where, again, you know, congrats on you. Some of the things when you hit those moments, like you could have thrown up your arms, you could have, you know, but instead hearing you, how you doubled down on so many things. You're like, no, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to figure this out. And again, went full speed ahead when others might have decided to.
But I always think that, like, I always think like when those moments happen, I go, these are the moments where everybody quits. This is the moment. This is the moment where people give up. This is the moment that they chuck the towel in. But this is the moment where
you're gonna not be that.
And I'm just like, you know what? Like, it might be hard right now. Like, what can I do? Like with resources or like ways of thinking about things in order to find a way through, even if it means pivoting or doing something else. And if you have that mindset in life, like I just genuinely believe, like you will be successful. Like it might take a macro timescale to do it, but there is just, if you truly took that mindset to everything, like nothing, like you're unstoppable. Like I truly believe that, like from the core of my being.
Yeah, totally agree as well. Well, for anybody who wants to reach out to you, how should they do so?
They should do so by sending me a message on my LinkedIn, or you can contact me on my email, which is, I believe, because I've got new email, is luke@atticusagency.com.
Okay, we'll make sure we get that from you, and we'll make sure the actual email is there in case that's wrong by the time this airs. We'll make sure we have the right information.
No, that's 100% right. Like, that's my new email address.
Okay, good. All right, we'll have both those below for anybody who wants to reach out to you. Otherwise, really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it, and really
I appreciate it.
To invite me on. Appreciate it.
You gave me a little boost of inspiration today, so I appreciate that.
Right.
I'm happy, brother. I left this conversation, like I came into this conversation, I was feeling a bit low energy, but then now I'm like ready to go.
Well, for anybody, if anybody has questions for Luke or us, just drop them in the comments, and we'll try to get them answers, and then see.
100%. Like I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anybody has about this, and I guess if you cut this here, are you going to send me over like the recording, any chopped up bits? I can put these through Opus Click. And then what I'm going to do is, whenever I share like one of these things, I'll do like a podcast announcement post, etc. But what I'll also do as well, like clips from the podcast. Whenever I share a click, I'll like try to like attribute that to you guys, because what I want to do by now is get on as many of these as possible, because I really want to get more into video content. But if I'm really candid about it, like I'm fucking awful at sitting down to like record videos. So I'm like, what can I do to get loads of video content out about demand gen, etc. on LinkedIn? And then this is going to form part of that strategy. So that will hopefully add more lift for you guys. Anyway,
cool. You'll have the edited finished version. We do clips. We'll share those clips with you too, so you can share them too.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Got to come at the call now, but I just want to say huge thank you for
appreciate it
having me on.
Yeah.